What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video I've got 10 fighters that are unranked in the UFC that I think will be champion one day, or at least top 5, top 10, like highly ranked contenders. These are fighters that I think you need to keep an eye on if you're not watching their fights already. A couple of them are fighting this weekend, and a couple of them have fights coming up, and then some of them are just great fighters that I think you need to watch. Some of them had fights recently as well. So yeah, we got 10 fighters, not one per division. I was going to try and do that, but you know, I couldn't find one for like some divisions that I was like really high on. But these guys both that I like as fighters, that I'm a fan of watching them fight, and also that I see the potential in them. I'm not going to be bringing up no Bo Nickel or Ikram Aliskerov. I'm not going to be talking about the one or Peyton Talbot. These aren't the guys that everyone's talking about. These are the fighters that I don't think many people know and that I think you should. So let's get into it. The first fighter I have is Josh Van. He's a flyweight. He's unranked right now, and he's got a fight booked at UFC 302 against Tatsuro Taira. This guy is a striking style, extremely fun boxing, aggressive, front foot forward kind of fighter. Watch his fights against Kevin Borjas and watch his fight against Felipe Bunes, his recent fight. I'm not going to say he's been fighting the best level of opposition. Like, he's not fighting crazy great fighters, didn't get thrust into the rankings on his first fight or anything like that. But this guy's only 22, 23 years of age, and the way he strikes is really good, and the way that he puts combinations together goes to the body as well, and this guy's output just picks up as the fight goes on. He actually got dropped by Kevin Borjas in his second fight in the UFC in round 1, and then in the second and third he completely drowned him and then just took over and beat him up the whole time. Almost broke the record for body strikes landed from a flyweight in a fight. And then in his last fight, he got a TKO in the second round. This guy, I'm comparing him to like the flyweight Holloway sort of style, in the terms that he just warms up, you know, he gets going, and then once this guy's in his flow state, once he's throwing combos on the front foot, this guy's looking like a flyweight version of Holloway against Kelvin Kattar out there. Not going to say quite that much, but the potential is there for sure. He's fighting Tatsuro Taira, which is kind of tough because Taira is another really good prospect with great grappling, and grappling is this guy's weakness so far from what I'm seeing. He only started like MMA training a couple of years ago. Before that, he was like had a Muay Thai left-way kind of background. But yeah, watch this guy's fights. Pay attention to him at UFC 302. He's definitely someone to watch. And even if he does lose to Tatsuro Taira, does not change my opinion on him unless he gets outstruck. But if this guy gets grappled by Taira, I'm not even going to judge him that much for it. I still think he's maybe not a future champion, but at 23, I think the ceiling is very high for this guy. So keep an eye out for Josh Van. But let's talk about another fighter. Next up, we got Ryo Nakamura, who's a 23-year-old, I believe, bantamweight fighting out of Japan. And this guy's got an Olympic wrestling background. He went to the Olympics for freestyle wrestling, and he did very well. I think he made it to like the quarterfinals or something, but still, very good. And that was when he was like 19, like 18, that very young, and he's still pretty young in his career. Look, he definitely needs some work. He's not the most, I would compare this guy as like the Asian Bo Nickel, I guess, the Asian bantamweight Bo Nickel, in a way, because look, if you watch him fight, you'll be like, the guy's pure wrestling is nuts. Like, but that's the thing, because similar to Bo Nickel does have some good submissions, but that's something Rynya's working on, is you see him take guys down at will, and he's just like completely ragdolling them in the grappling, but he isn't able to get heaps of submissions. He does have power on the feet. If you guys watch his fight on Road to UFC and the final, he knocked the guy out in like 30 seconds. He's a little bit open in the stand-up, I'll be honest, but if this guy can refine his wrestling, refine the submission attempts in his grappling, his wrestling is nuts. You don't stop his takedowns. His last 2 fights were decisions, but they were like 30-27, 30-26 type of performances. He fought the fucking jiu-jitsu guy that Rogan was spazzing out about, and even though that guy is not like a high-level opponent, for a style like Ryo who's going to shoot a bunch of takedowns, the jiu-jitsu guy was causing some problems, just like going for leg locks and shit. But Ryo, he's a really good grappler, really good wrestler. Doesn't have a fight booked right now, but I think keep an eye on this guy. Definitely, like right now, I'm not saying this guy beats guys in the top 15. I don't think he would. Maybe beat some guys with shit takedown defense. But if this guy refines his striking a little bit and he actually adds some submissions to his game, the wrestling is crazy. So he's going to be a problem for a lot of guys once he works that stuff out. But yeah, keep an eye on Ryo Nakamura out of Japan. Let's move on though to another fighter. Next up, we got Vinicius Oliveira, who I believe is 28, 29 years old. He's a striker from Brazil. And this guy, look, his game does have some holes in it. In his last fight, he was getting taken down a lot. He's quite a wild fighter, but he's got one-shot KO power. He's dynamic as fuck. If you watched his fight on the Contender Series, flatlines the guy. And then in his last fight, after a tough battle, he got taken down a bunch, and then he rallied back. Oh, he was still winning the fight, but he rallied and got a finish with a flying knee KO. So this guy's dangerous anytime the fight, like however long the fight goes. His striking is crisp as hell. And yeah, even though the takedown defense is not tremendous, he does need to work on that. Again, not saying this guy's a future champion, but again, if he's got the tools to be a real problem in the striking for a lot of guys. He's currently booked to fight Ricky Simone, which I think is a tough matchup for him just because Ricky is going to grapple. But if it stays on the feet, I could see him getting a finish, and he would then be a ranked bantamweight. So yeah, this is one of my less confident picks, but I still think he's extremely good and definitely a fighter that will be ranked at some point. But let's move on to someone else. Mateusz Rebecki, who is a Polish lightweight. He is 31, so he needs to kind of get a move on. But he's fighting this weekend against Carlos Diego Ferreira, who's a former ranked fighter. And if he wins that, I'm going to have him in my rankings. Probably I'll put him at number 15, I would say. And I think the UFC will give him a ranked opponent if he wins this. He's 19-1, as I said. Only got one loss way back in the day. And this guy's style, it's hard to compare to anyone. Like, I don't know who's like the most comparable guy, because he's a real short, stocky dude. He's got like 66-inch reach or something. He's got fuck all arm length, but he throws just bombs on the feet, knocks you out, kicks the shit out of your legs, mixes it up really well, aggressive, good head movement, and then his takedowns and his wrestling is really strong too. He won his last fight by submission against an opponent who was like a foot taller than him. But yeah, so he's got good submissions, he's got good takedowns, good takedown defense as well. He's pretty strong at the hips. I don't know why I said that, but he's got really good striking. He's got great leg kicks. He fought Loic Rajdabov and gave him absolutely nothing. Rajdabov got completely tuned up in that fight, beat the fuck out of him. So yeah, Mateusz Rebecki is a guy to watch. I think he's going to smoke Carlos Diego Ferreira this weekend. He's like a minus 500 favorite, so a lot of people do share the same opinions as me. And again, this is not me saying like I'm breaking news. Guys, you must not have heard about this guy. Like, I know a lot of people, hardcore fans of the sport, definitely know who these guys are. But I'm talking in the broad sense that when people are going like, oh, the prospect to watch is Bo Nickel or Peyton Talbot, that's the casuals prospects. These that I'm talking about, they're the hardcore fans prospects. So yeah, that's who I'm talking about. Mateusz Rebecki, I think he'll be a ranked opponent come next Tuesday if he gets a big win. And then I think he can fight a guy maybe even in the top 10. And I do think this guy does beat half the rank, or not half, but like a good portion of the rankings right now at lightweight. So I'm excited to see him fight, and I think he's going to get a big win. But let's move on to another fighter. Mauricio Rua is a lightweight from Brazil with a 10-1 record, all 10 of those wins coming by way of knockout. And he just fought Jamie Mullarkey on the Brazil card, UFC 301, and he absolutely beat the fuck out of him. If you didn't watch that fight, I highly recommend it. This guy is the Brazilian Conor McGregor in a lot of aspects. The way this guy strikes, the fluidity of which he moves and bounces in and out, this is like OG Conor kind of vibes from him. Really precise striking, a lot of power, great counter right hands, versatile act, like a lot of strikes that he throws. He chucks in scissor sweeps, flying knees. He'll go for like that sweeping calf kick that Ferguson did against Gaethje, where he kicked his leg out when he swept along the ground. He's got, counter rights, mixes into the body well, spinning kicks. This guy just throws a lot. He's really just has fun out there. He looks confident in his striking. And the one loss on his record is to a 13-0 undefeated fighter. So yeah, I'm not going to hold that to him too much, but I do think when he's under the bright lights, he clearly performs well, and he's had a great debut, and apparently I heard they might be looking to do him versus Bobby Green, or that might be something the UFC wanted to make as a fight. So if that were to happen, that clearly shows the UFC has big expectations for him, and he would become a ranked opponent fighting a ranked opponent in just his second fight if he were to beat Bobby Green, which I think he could. Now, I don't want to get I want to pump the brakes just a little bit, but in terms of the pure striking, I want to see this guy, people shoot some takedowns on him. I want to see if he defends those double legs and single legs, and if he can get up from bottom if he ends up there. But on the feet, this guy's a problem for a lot of people. You can kind of just use the eye test, and even if it's not against the best level of opposition, there's still guys that don't look this good against cans. And Malaki's not even a can. He's not a great fighter, and he's got a chin. He doesn't have the best chin, but Malaki didn't even hit him. I swear, he landed Rufi landed pretty much everything he threw. I swear he had an 80% striking accuracy in that fight. The stats will tell you otherwise, but I could have sworn he did not miss a shot. And then Malaki landed basically nothing on him. He's just so defensively sound as well. When he's up against the cage, he was rolling with shots. The movements are just perfect, to be honest. I'm glazing here. But yeah, Mauricio Rua, great fighter to watch. Keep an eye on him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in the cage next. Let's move on, though, to another fighter. Myc Oralb. Live the name. Love the name. We all know Myc Oralb. He's a 26-year-old, believe it or not. I know you think he looks 70. But believe it or not, he's 26. He's young in his career, not super experienced, and he's coming off some big wins. He subbed Uros Medic in the second round in his UFC debut on short notice, and he cut down to lightweight now, which is going to be his weight class moving forward, and beat Elvis Brenner, who's actually a really good lightweight. And honestly, if Elvis Brenner had won that fight, that's the guy that I would have had in this video, because I did a prospects video a couple months ago, and I actually did have Elvis Brenner in there, and Oralb beat him pretty soundly. He had some rough moments at times, but apart from that, he looked great. His wrestling is off the charts in the first round. When he's not gassed, the cardio issue is definitely a factor, but maybe that's just a one-off. Brenner is a guy that pushes a pretty high pace too. But in the striking, he was hurting Elvis Brenner. He's got big power too. He's got some nasty flatline KOs on the regional scene. And if you watch this guy's fights, yeah, his wrestling is crazy. His chain takedowns are elite. And the grappling is just going to be a problem for a lot of guys, as well as the striking. So, again, young in his career, definitely has some refinements that need to be made, but once he makes those, I do think he's going to be a problem, and I'm very confident he'll be a ranked fighter in the next year or two. So yeah, let's move on to another fighter. Kevin Gisette is a fighter out of New Zealand by way of France, or vice versa. He's a French fighter, but he fights out of CKB. His striking is elite, and unfortunately, he was going to fight this weekend, but his opponent pulled out due to weight cutting complications or something. So I was looking forward to seeing him fight, but in terms of the welterweight division, there's not many guys I would put on the shortlist ahead of him in terms of prospects. Look, maybe that are unranked. Obviously, you could say MVP's a prospect, but I wouldn't call him a prospect. But Renat has already kind of been shown levels a little bit. Michael Morales is undefeated, and I was going to put him in this video, but I just kind of think back to some of his fights, and he just looks kind of mid. Against Jake Matthews, this guy looks just mid. He's not beating up low. If you're going to be a really good prospect, I want to see you beating up the low-level opposition. That doesn't mean you're going to beat up top guys, but at least that gives me confidence that I'm okay, yeah, you're able to just tune up this 12-6 fighter and make him look like a bum. That's good. You should be doing that. But Michael Morales kind of just doesn't look amazing when he fights. Even he struggled with Max Griffin, so I was going to put him in here, but I'm going to wait until he needs to give me a really good performance for me to really consider him a good prospect, even though he is undefeated. But Kevin just said does have losses. One of them is to Jack Della Maddalena, so that tells you that he's not fighting scrubs. This was on the regional scene. He's not just got some padded regional record where he's fighting bums. He fought Jack Della. But this guy's striking is really good. Even his grappling, he beat Kiefer Crosby in his debut by sub. Not the best win, but Kevin just said. Then he fought Song Kanan, who's also not good, but at least Song Kanan is someone who dropped Ian Gary. And Ian Gary did tune up Song Kanan and finish him in the end. But still, that's a guy that dropped him, and then Gisette just ran rings around him and didn't get touched pretty much, jabbed his face off, swelled up his eyes, and just looked like a fucking technical maestro out there. So I was looking forward to seeing him fight, but I wanted to include someone from welterweight, and so this is the number one guy on my list, to be honest. If Renat goes out there and smokes Nicholas Dalby, I might put him back on the list, and I would have had Bonfim on the list too, but he already lost to Dalby. So right now, welterweight prospects, they're running low. There's not a lot of them. but Kevin Gisette is definitely one to watch. So yeah, keep an eye on him. Hopefully he gets a fight rebooked soon. But if not, we'll probably see him on the Australia card or maybe the France card when they go back to Paris. But let's move on to another fighter. Christian Leroy Duncan is who I'm going with in terms of a middleweight prospect. Now, middleweight's great because there's actually a lot of guys that I could have put on here. But I wanted to approach it with like a sort of prospect sense and also like an unranked fighter to watch sense. Because I could have gone with Ikram, but everyone kind of knows Ikram. Like Ikram is the guy that everyone's like, oh, he fought Hamzat, and all the so-called all the casual fans that think they are think they know something by saying, oh, you know Ikram fought Hamzat, right? It's like, yeah, we know, bro. So I'm not putting him. I'm not putting Bo Nickel. No one cares. I would have had Kopylov on here, but he lost to Fluffy Hernandez. I can't put Fluffy on here because he's ranked. I can't put Michelle Pereira there because he's ranked. Same with Braulio. And there's just not heaps and heaps of guys apart from that. Like, there are some good fighters. But like I wouldn't call him Robocop a prospect, even though I do think he's a great fighter. But like Christian Leroy Duncan, even though he did lose, not last fight, but 2 fights ago, or maybe 3 fights ago. I think it was 3 fights ago. He lost to Arman Petrosian. I think that's a really good learning experience for him because in that fight he did look kind of mid, and his striking looked a bit weird. It looked like he was just like a bit. Like, he was stuck when he couldn't land all his big power shots and stuff, and Petrosian kind of just stuck at range, and Leroy Duncan didn't know how to fight behind a jab. But he's 28, and he learnt from that experience. He came back, smoked Dennis Tool, and who's a can, but yeah, you'll smoke cans. That's what we want to see. That sounds like I'm encouraging drug use. But then he went out there and smoked Claudio Ribeiro, beat him up in the first, beat him up in the second, got a finish. Again, not crazy opponents in terms of like, oh my god, he beat this guy. But the way he's looking is a lot better. He does appear to be making good improvements. I assume we're going to see him on the Manchester card because he's from England. He's 28, as I said, so he's got time to do stuff, and he's inexperienced in his career, only 10-1, I believe. So yeah, I think this guy's going to show levels in his next fight. I think he's going to keep making big improvements because that Petrosian fight was his second fight in the UFC, and his first fight was against Dusko Todorovic or some shit, and Dusko injured himself. So that wasn't really like a proper fight to have your debut. So that Petrosian fight to me was like, yeah, you're inexperienced, you need to work on some things. But he's doing that, he's got the athleticism, he's got power, he's got range. If you can learn to fight behind it, and his grappling's good too. He's strong, mixes in takedown. So yeah, keep an eye on CLD, Christian Leroy Duncan. He's a great fighter to watch. But let's move on to someone else. Carlos Alberg is the next guy that I have here. I'm kind of cheating, but I'm not, because he isn't ranked. So I'm allowed to put him in here, but if he wins this weekend and he's fighting a ranked opponent. So this is probably like the closest to, like, they're pretty much already ranked that I'm going with here. But Alberg, I still would call him definitely a prospect. He's got 1 loss in his UFC career to Kennedy Nzechukwu, who's not great, but that was like clearly not his best performance. He was beating him up and then gassed out. But since then, he's KOing a lot of guys, finishing dudes. I think he's going to smoke on Alonzo Manifield, and if he does that, that aids to my confidence in him becoming like a top 10, maybe not top 5, but definitely top 10 guy. His grappling is solid. His striking is very good. His defense ain't tremendous, but his power is great. His counter shots are really good. And if you can win this fight, I'd love to see him go on the Australia card as like a main card spot. Maybe you could give him like a top 10 guy. Maybe do him versus like Khalil Roundtree versus Jamal Hill loser. You could do him versus one of them. That'd be a sick fight. But yeah, I'm high on Carlos Alberg. I think he's a great fighter still, even though some of his performances haven't been tremendous. Like against Dawoon Jung, a lot of people said he didn't look great, but apparently he was taking a bunch of injuries into that fight, so I'll give him benefit of the doubt. But yeah, Carlos Alberg, keep an eye out for him. He's fighting this weekend in a couple hours, honestly. But yeah, great fighter. Let's move on. Last guy we have here is Robelis de Spain. You guys know he's the Cuban Ngannou is what he's being labelled as. Taekwondo background, so not the best, but I think he was a silver medalist as a Taekwondo athlete at the Olympics, I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. I'm 90% sure that's what happened. But yeah, his striking is solid. His power is out of this world. He's got crazy power. He's fighting Waldo Cortez Acosta, who is probably going to just chin, honestly, and just KO in the first round. And if he doesn't, I'll be very upset, and I will definitely decrease my expectations of him. But still, his power is crazy. He's got the reach. He's got the athleticism, and even if his like grappling's not great, even if his technique's not tremendous, you can at heavyweight you can just get away with shit by being athletic. So yeah, Rebellis Despain is a problem. He's gonna win this weekend by first round KO. And yeah, that's the video done, guys. I hope you enjoyed. These are some prospects to watch, in my opinion. 10 fighters that I'm very high on, that I think will be top 5, top 10, maybe even champions in the future. And we'll see. We'll come back to this in maybe a year or two and see if my predictions are aging well or if they're aging terribly, which some of them do. But that'll be it. I'll see you guys in the next one tomorrow. Tune in for the Fight Companion. I'll be live for the entire main card. Probably not the prelims because it starts really early in Australia. But yeah, main card, I'll be live. So tune in. See ya.